I remember when we were having our second child and I was like we were naming our kids after interesting people. Our first was Ansel. And I was like, maybe Elon. Because at the time it was like,
You dodged a
Oh
bullet
my
there.
God, you dodged a rocket, not a
Just to
bullet.
be clear, I never once thought that.
Hi, friends. How's it going?
Hey, guys.
it's going.
It's going.
Sam?
Another week. Another week.
I don't see a ninja star in Sam's hand today, so I feel like that's probably good.
Oh, I got it right here.
Oh, good. You keep it close at all
I
times.
actually have a Ninja Star carrying pouch.
Ooh, that makes it even cooler.
It has a belt loop, so I can stick it on my belt and then whip it out.
I was going to ask if it had a belt loop.
Yeah, totally.
I was going to say,
Perfect.
is that like a child protection lock? But no, that would be too safe. Well, welcome back, dear listeners and viewers. This is a good reminder. You can watch us every week as well.
But I don't know why you would. People do. People do.
People seem to love it.
Sometimes Sam is shirtless, so some people might want to watch.
Oh
for
my
that
goodness.
purpose.
Now Brett's baiting our poor, unassuming, innocent audience.
I cannot imagine a person on earth that would be a draw for, other than maybe my wife.
Just
Either way, honestly, I mean, really, whatever's most comfortable. But yes, dear viewers, listeners, fans, people who stumble across this clip at Instagram, thank you for joining us for another week of More or Less. We endeavor on this pod to take you behind the scenes in Silicon Valley. And I think we do it, although we're not often
think we do.
all in Silicon Valley, but
Silicon Valley is a state of mind.
I was going to say it is a state of mind. It is a state of mind that I like to think we have
It's
some.
like Silicon Valley is neither a valley nor mostly about silicon anymore.
Discuss amongst
Ooh,
yourself.
should we rebrand it?
Isn't it? It's kind of about silicon again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nice that it's come back around.
That's just marketing fluff so VCs can dump billions of dollars into things and
Wait,
take
Sam,
fees.
you don't think chips matter in the AI revolution? Say more.
I don't think I think the AI revolution is fake. We all know this.
Oh, yes. We do
it's
know this.
I want to be clear. It's great for translation. There's a few obviously cool businesses you can build. I actually have, if you'd like, I'll give you my new angle on what you can build with AI.
Okay, we're going to get to that in segment 2 of this podcast. I'm going to wrap up the introductions by just letting our listeners know we've got the full quad here. Britt and Dave Morin holding down the offline ventures, veteran startup founders, veterans of, gosh, I can't even remember. Where did you guys work? Dave worked at Meta.
Google, Apple,
Google, Apple.
Facebook, not
They
Meta.
both worked at Apple. Maybe you've heard of those companies. And Sam Lesson
Pool
of
House.
Slow
Boy.
Ventures, who's also worked at Meta and also built a lot of companies. And myself, Jessica Lesson. What a gang. What a gang. You know, we're kind of like, I'm going to try and do this for the next pod. I'm going to count down and I'm going to do like a 12 days of Christmas, and being like 4 founders of tech firms, 3 venture capitalists,
Ooh, that's a
2
good idea.
people who and okay, we can all look forward to that. Silence from the people.
I like it. No, I said yes. I'm a hard yes on that.
I
Jess.
don't think any of our listeners care about this. Let's talk about some techniques.
I care, Jess. I'm with you.
I'm just bringing them into my state of mind.
I love it.
This
Me too.
is tech news.
Look, we've done
Okay.
a lot of stuff in the tech industry. If you're here, you can listen to us. If not, it's fine. People who come visit the Pool House frequently cite the pod, so we're in good shape.
I don't know if you guys know, but we had primaries. Big primary Super Tuesday. This week, we have a U.S. presidential election coming in this fall. And while we are not experts on this subject, there is certainly politics in the air. And so I thought it'd be a good time to check back in on our good friend, the old TikTok. I know no one here has any opinions on that. But there's another ban moving through Congress, likely to, it seems, go to a House vote that would force ByteDance, the world's most valuable private tech company by a long shot, to divest of TikTok. Now, we've seen, I don't know, dozens of attempts for the US to try and chip away at this, none of which have come to fruition so far. But I'm curious what you guys think. Is there another moment here? Does it seem like something could happen, or more of
No
the same?
chance.
No chance.
Not until after the election. I mean, like, look, I will say it's like the zero dark 30 thing. Day 623 of the U.S. letting a huge national security threat sit inside our borders, which is insane, right? Like, it's like ridiculous that TikTok is allowed to be in the U.S. given its current control structure and kind of the geopolitical situation. That said, the Democrats are like holding on by the teeth of their skin, the skin of their teeth, whatever the analogy is, right?
That skinny teeth. Yep.
Even the New York Times thinks Trump is in the lead, which who knows what reality is, but there's just no chance that in that environment they're going to like risk any youth vote, even if they're terrible woke people, for the sake of banning TikTok right now. And I think that sucks because I think it is a huge national security risk. But I think until there's a new configuration, I just don't see a world in which anyone has the balls to actually ban TikTok.
Okay. Brett and Dave, what do you guys think?
I do think it's potentially something that both Biden and Trump could do. And a little aside is that one of our kids, he like loves downloading games. We don't let him download that many games, but every game he asked me to download over the last week was from some Chinese game developer. And I was kind of wondering if this is like much broader than just TikTok. How would we legislate this on a more macro level?
I think it's an excellent point. And it's not just TikTok. And you can look at e-commerce, which arguably isn't as sensitive as social media, but Shein, Temu, I mean, these guys are really capturing a greater share of the US market. Dave, what do you think?
ByteDance has this other app called CapCut, which is they've broken out the editing tools which are used to make the TikTok videos. And they've got a very powerful set of creator tools that I think to some extent Meta has caught up with, but in some ways not. And so there's a lot of folks that use this CapCut app to edit video. And I noticed a few weeks ago that they've also now moved the TikTok feed into CapCut. And so they've also, it's not just a video editor anymore. And to Britt's point, I know a lot of kids use CapCut to edit videos. And then now they've sort of taken the TikTok feed and moved it sort of slyly over into the CapCut feed. And I'm reading these articles about what's going on.
Dave, where are you reading those articles?
CNBC or Bloomberg.
No,
You're not supposed to say that, Dave.
Dave, CapCut broke
The wrong answer.
the information, broke the story. You sent it to me seconds after we published it about how there was concern inside of TikTok that CapCut was being run centrally out of China and not under the same management structure of TikTok.
You mean that story? I'm talking about the story I'm staring at is the one related to what's going on with the bill in Congress.
I think the point you raised, the excellent point that CapCut is really getting a lot of usage and integrating with TikTok. We had reported that it's actually under separate and more directly controlled by Chinese headquarters management than even TikTok is, which I think is also interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that's the thing here. As I'm reading these articles about the legislation that's trying to get pushed through, everything is focused on TikTok being divested from ByteDance. And so I guess the thing that I would like to alert people to is like, let's make sure we're following the ball here. And
can I throw out a modest proposal?
Yes, please do.
So I was at a conference earlier this week, and there was a panel of people yelling about children in social media, which I think was a little myopic in terms of the overall like real situation. But the thing I kind of said to one of the panelists afterwards is, and I credit actually Mark for this. I think he's the first person to really push me to it, but I think he's totally right. Apple, it's really hard for the social networks to regulate this stuff, right? And like the parental controls, et cetera. It's really easy for Apple to do it. Parents buy the devices for their kids. The parental controls are baked in. It would be unbelievably easy for Apple, just for kids, to start and say, hey, what apps can and can't you use? Social media, on, off, right? It'd be really easy for Apple to say, Chinese apps, on, off. Like they have all the infrastructure to do that, and they're the top of the.
Where does Apple make its products?
I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying like the regulatory pressure, you could either put the regulatory pressure on TikTok, right? Which is what people are trying to do. And then you have this whack-a-mole problem because companies are faster than regulators. So you regulate TikTok, but by the time you regulated TikTok, they just moved all the traffic to Temu or whatever. Or you can go up the stack and say, hey, if you're a phone platform, if you are an app store, you have to provide to parents the ability to control what apps their kids can download and have controls like you can have a group for social networking, you can have a group for Chinese apps, like, and then just, that's the easy solution. And I really think that my new thing on this is like, sometimes you can't go directly at a problem. I don't think the US government is set up to successfully go after TikTok on this. But I think going after Apple and phone platforms and saying, hey guys, because Apple can't do it proactively for the reasons Jessica, which is like they have too many Chinese ties. But it's like, oh, we're so sorry. Like the US government is forcing us to like put these controls in. Then they could use the kind of same strategy they used very aggressively on ad targeting, which allowed them to build a huge ad network and claim, oh, it's privacy. I think it's totally reasonable for Apple to just, and Google as phone stores to say, hey, yeah, like, you can choose as a parent, but like, let's all turn off the Chinese apps if we're worried about them. Like, let's all turn off. If you really care about turning off social networking, you can try to block one Instagram account. Your kid's going to make another. They're going to have 16 Finstas. Good luck. Like the identity system doesn't work for that, but it does work for if you're buying the phone, right? Which is kind of the point of interaction.
That's a great point. Yeah, Dave, what do you think?
Does that solve the national security issue, Sam?
Sure.
I mean, putting it in the hands of the parents doesn't change the national security.
I think it largely. I think it doesn't. It's not perfectly, but it certainly is a huge help, right? Because like, what happens realistically? You put it in the hands of parents. We all know that defaults are destiny, right? And so the reality is Apple could cut TikTok's business, if that's our concern, in the US down to nothing very easily, just with defaults. And then the reality is you have all these people, like, I do actually think in the Republican communities, this is like far more like obvious, right? Like the problem is like the extreme left wing, right? In a lot of ways to getting this stuff done, unfortunately. And so do you think that a bunch of Republican parents would just like turn off their kids? Like probably. At which point, like, it's not that it goes to zero, but you go from 200 million DAU and like whatever the crazy number is to 20. And like, we can live with 20.
But Sam, I'm just kind of like, do you think the U.S. government should mandate that Apple create a control? Or are you saying the government should mandate that Apple just kick it out of the App Store or something?
No, I think the easier, realistic path is create a control with the defaults. So if you created a control and said, hey, when you get a new phone, if you're a parent, right, like there's a flow you go through, right? You already have like all these parent accounts anyway. You say, you set up the phone, you bought it, it's on your credit card. Maybe you have to go through some flow. I can imagine a bunch of designs for that. And it's like, do you want Chinese apps? Yes or no? You can either make it a flat choice. You can certainly manipulate it, any way the language you want to get the outcome you want. Then you're like, do you want social networking? Yes, no. And then everyone's happy. I think if like that is like a fine path, right? It keeps the playing field level for social networks. It accomplishes, I think, a lot of what you'd want with TikTok. And I think it's far easier. I think saying ban TikTok, that's a thing that like candidly might be marginally better, but you'll never get done. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a way to set this up and frame it so you get the outcome you want. But we're looking at the wrong companies. Like you got to look up the stack if you want this done. I think trying to go after TikTok is just too toxic directly, personally.
Dave.
Yeah. And I think the devil is in the default. And if you don't present the parent or the user with the option by default to turn it off, then you're not going to get knocking it down from 200 to 20.
Oh, I agree, but I think that's like extreme. That's like the devil's in the default, but the default also like is like easy, I think, right? Like I think once you have that stuff in place, you can frame it. You like safe apps with an American flag, right? Or you're like dangerous apps. Like Apple already does this. They already do crazy stuff to like limit their app store all over the place from quote unquote dangerous apps. So we just need Apple to step up and Google to step up and create one more level of control that's specifically for parents, which again, they have a better graph of than anyone. It's not perfect, but like their ability to identify and control their kids at that level is far stronger than the social network's ability to.
Yeah, no question.
Can I be devil's advocate and stick to these double puns here? Because I actually wonder, are all Chinese apps bat.
No, definitely not.
But then why would you want to categorically remove all of them?
I'm not. I'm giving people choice. People love choice.
But it's like yes or no. It's very binary. Like,
Well, I'm proposing two. I'm proposing two binaries. One is America only apps or global apps, or you could say or China apps, or select the number of flags you want, and we can choose which flags are checked by default.
And how do you define what country an app is from?
Well, the way Apple would probably define it would be based on who pays them the most. Kidding. I mean, I think you can. They look. There's business registration like things on this. You could talk about.
Oh, I think TikTok's registered in Singapore last time I checked. But yes,
But I mean, you can also just look at IP addresses.
Look, we have from a FINRA perspective. There's all sorts of perspectives. I think Apple is best positioned to call up the chain. They already have the infrastructure to do it and say who owns what. Right? Like you have a sub of a sub of a sub in a place. You can talk about board composition. They ask the most annoying questions to developers already. But you have to define when you put an app in like who owns it. It's like incredibly insane. But they already do all this stuff. So like it's just not that hard to ask them to incrementally add a few controls smartly. And I think of any company out there, not only are they best positioned, but they're also the ones that have demonstrated the most willingness to do this type of stuff, usually for their own ends. But like, I don't see why we wouldn't ask them to do a little bit more.
And to be clear, that is what this bill is targeting, Sam. So effectively what this bill says is that if ByteDance does not divest these assets, then they will be forcing Google and Apple to shut off the assets in the app store.
That's great. I think that's the right direction. I just think I think there's an easier, even if that's your ultimate goal, I think there's like a easier to sell bill in the middle, which is, we're not turning it off. It's just controls. It's not like we haven't seen this playbook 15 times, right? Like, I think you could do a lot with that.
It's such a conundrum for Apple. I mean, and look, this is not a new problem for them. The US-China wars have trade war for now. They're just squarely in the middle of that. And I remember when I was last in China last year, the government announced iPhones were banned from government buildings or something like that. I mean, it's just this back and forth. And there's such codependence there.
But that's why Apple, even if they can't do this unilaterally, they can be forced to do it, quote unquote.
Google's like, that ship sailed a long time ago. Goodbye, China.
And then maybe the answer is the way you do it is you get Google, since they've already sailed on it, to do it in Android, even though it matters a lot less. To be to lead ahead of Apple on this. And then you're like, look, Apple, Google did it. Like, you need to do it too. Like, I think part of the problem here, candidly, is, and I don't know how to solve this, but I've seen this in a lot of different places, is like a lot of these types of efforts, they're just not that sophisticated compared to like the most sophisticated actors in the world on this type of stuff. And like, I don't like, you look at a lot of these like incredible screw ups at Harvard or the OpenAI board or whatever. It's like they're under resourced and unsophisticated. And then compared to like how corporations and smart teams that are passionate and have profit incentive approach these things. And I think like this is a classic thing where like some senator wants some headline, so they're going to do like this brute force thing as opposed to being a little bit smarter, right, about how you weave the needle to get the outcome you want. I just don't buy. I mean, even for Trump, right, who's like the king of like blunt instruments, you can make a lot of noise, but you don't create action, right?
Well, Trump tried to ban them in the courts.
No, that's my point. Is he did the most blunt trauma approach possible, and it was struck down by the Supreme Court and failed and didn't get anywhere, right? Like there's whereas ByteDance is a smart company. I'm sure they're being very sophisticated about how they respond to this.
Okay, to devil's advocate you again, Sam, Gemini tells me that around a quarter to a third of the revenue of the App Store is from Chinese developers. So like that's a big chunk. I didn't actually not know it was that large.
Yeah,
it's huge.
I don't know. I feel
think Apple's just going to want you to like default off Chinese apps.
I don't think they want that, to be clear, but I think that they can be tiptoed into it and forced into it. And I honestly think, like, if you think about it, like, it's for the long-term viability of the company. You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar company of which the App Store is important, but a small part of their revenue. If they feel like they're going to end up being complicit in, like, effectively the 2030 Chinese subversion of the American, youth as they invade, Taiwan and convince everyone it's fine. Like, I think that they can be convinced. But I get your point. I think it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be like, it's not like Tim Cook really wants to do this and he just needs some air cover, right? It's going to be the type of thing where there needs to be some heft behind it, which is why I like this idea of getting Google to do it first and then just turn around and be like, Apple, like, are you kidding? Like, you're willing to say that like tracking is bad and like use that to lever your way into ads, and you're not willing to like protect the American youth. People love protecting the American youth.
Yeah. Well, here's a data point for you guys too. So information, we reported ByteDance's latest finances a few days ago. So in the third quarter of last year, revenue grew 43% to $31 billion. I'm looking at Meta's, but I mean, the upshot is this is business is still in a tear. I mean, this thing is like, now, of course, that's not TikTok per se, right? I mean, it's a lot of other things.
It's a lot of TikTok though. I mean, TikTok's clearly like, I want to be clear. As you might remember, I like was an early huge lover of TikTok. I think the format's great. It's like the great lean back television. It's awesome, right? It's a great product, but it's now copied in a bunch of places. Like, no, Reels isn't as tuned, but it's pretty fucking funny, right? And good. And like, I don't know. I just don't think we can take the national security risk is my issue. I have no problem. People are like, well, TikTok is bad for the American youth's health and blah, blah, blah. I think like, fine, if parent want to control, they should. I don't want my kids on TikTok, but I don't think that's a reason to kick it out. It's literally just an ownership problem.
The national security risk is so unbelievably high. It's so shocking to me that it's taken us this long to respond to this.
Well, as I said before, it's like if we don't kick them out and we get screwed by it, which we will from a political,
it's
like
crazy.
It's like
just
it's on
crazy.
us. That's actually the cost of having an ineffective government,
absolutely
right? And like,
crazy.
And they just ban all of our social media for exactly the same reason. It's like we can't get it up to fix it. It's what's on us.
Dave, when you're talking about national security risk, be more specific of what you think the greatest threats are.
Sam already said it earlier that these algorithms, well, they're beyond algorithms. They're, very advanced systems that are choosing which content to show to who. And so you're building both personality profiles of every single American youth in the country. You're also controlling the media streams that go into their brains. And you're able to, this hasn't been a short period of time. This has been a very long period of time. We're talking years now where effectively, it's like handing over, like in the 90s when we were all growing up, it's like Tom Brokaw was on NBC News and there were very few channels, and the story that you heard and the information that you consumed was like very easy to understand. If you guys remember in the 90s, there was like all of this incredible debate over whether or not we should put parental advisory explicit lyrics on certain CDs, and Hillary Clinton's in front of Congress battling, about ratings of movies and music, right? Like that's how precise we were about what people were consuming in the 90s. Fast forward to now, and you effectively have every single person in the country, let alone the kids, consuming their own personal counterculture full of content defined by an algorithm that is not inside the United States. And you're changing people's hearts and minds. And this hasn't been going on for like a few months. This has been going on for years. And so Sam's analogy earlier that like if China decides to invade Taiwan and they want the American youth on their side, they've already laid the groundwork. Like we've seen it time and time again. And so, to some extent, the damage has already been done, right? But this is almost like we have a very serious mind virus loose in the United States being driven by this platform. And we haven't inoculated people from it. And it just continues to be just spoon-fed to the entire population. And it's crazy.
Well, and to be clear, I don't like the old story was this is about stealing data or something. I'm not that worried about that.
No,
like
not at all.
It doesn't. It's like that's like the wrong
because
argument.
the data's already stolen. Like I am not.
It doesn't matter. It's like Timmy lives in Chicago. Who cares? Like it's irrelevant. Like it doesn't. But what does matter, is I think what Dave is saying is like it's not even the algorithm. It's just like if you control the top of the channel and like all the gates,
if you control the story,
what you do is you just subtly you think about bot farms and control. It's like you're like, I'm gonna let these people that are like pro this issue, I'm not gonna like limit them quite as much, or these other people. You can be so sophisticated about how you approach just changing on specific issues. And the key is you wouldn't do it normally, right? Because it's not worth it. But like it's a super weapon, right? And you can just like when you choose, you just push the needle a little bit in one direction, and all of a sudden you have American youth saying insane shit.
Yep.
right? And we realized, by the way, since 10.7, that it actually matters when American youth say insane shit, right?
Mhm.
So like, I think that's like, the other piece here is like, this is weaponizable, and I don't know, it's like pretty clear. Now, I think the counter argument, which everyone says, is like, the second you ban TikTok in the US, everyone else turns around and says, well, wait a minute. America controls all the other social media. Like, shouldn't we ban it if this is the problem? Like, isn't France going to be like, we don't want Americans controlling our French space? But like, I mean, candidly, I think that's a problem for another day. And two, I obviously think that like, I just don't trust the governance around and like the separation of business and politics in China anywhere near I trust it in the US as much as I trust in the US.
Okay. It's a compelling case. TikTok would say that all of their data on US citizens is stored in the US. Now,
but that's the thing. Isn't that the crazy thing? That's total
Doesn't
misdirection.
matter.
No one cares.
I'm
Doesn't
just
matter.
telling you what they would say. I'm just a corporate blah, blah, blah.
I know, but it's like, it's in some ways like whoever came up with a TikTok is stealing our data story gave them such a gift.
TikTok came up with it.
They call it Project Texas, and Larry Ellison is helping them store the data.
It's like literally like you're fighting with someone. And you're like, hey, look at this shiny object over here. You should be really angry about this shiny object that's completely irrelevant while I have a huge broadsword in my other hand. Like, it's total misdirection. And so like, good for them. I mean, they're great at PR and like managing this clearly, but it's like, it's hilarious the degree to which they've been able to manipulate the general storyline to the completely wrong thing to focus on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we wrap TikTok, any final thoughts? What do we think? So are we going to vote? Is this bill going to amount to something? Yay or nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Dave, what are you?
I'm optimistic. There are a lot of people involved on both sides of the aisle on this thing. And
are they very smart people? What was Trump's line? A lot of excellent people on both sides.
I don't know. It seems like this is not dying as an issue.
That's what I think the significance of this is. I think if you could have written the narrative that this was dying before this for all the reasons and bigger fish and so on. And I think it's really clear it's not. And to your point, it also represents a slightly different way of coming at it. And so I think the ways are going to keep coming and something's going to happen.
I agree. And I really hope that they do, because this needs to be, it's just so urgent. We have to get this under control.
Okay. Speaking of getting it under control, should we talk about AI?
Again?
So another
Or are we going to put a moratorium on it?
I don't think we can put a moratorium on it, but we also don't have to buy into the hype. But just a couple of the latest headlines. So this week saw Elon Musk, you may have heard of him, decide to sue OpenAI, you may have heard of it, over essentially not being open, but
over closeness.
Well, this is his clever, his Twitter, his X feed is all, he changed Sam Altman's badge from the photo to say closed AI, and actually says he'll drop his lawsuit if they change their name. Yeah. This is the problem. You guys are laughing.
Wait, he actually just like changed his profile picture unilaterally?
No. He posted a picture of Sam Altman with his OpenAI badge.
I gotta say, if Elon was like, I'm just gonna change Sam Altman's shit on, that would be both crazy and really funny.
He's the ultimate troll.
I mean, he's basically there. He slows the New York Times' traffic. I don't know what else there is. But a couple of interesting points from this latest lawsuit. So Elon, of course, is saying OpenAI started as a nonprofit, an Elon-backed nonprofit, and by going in this for-profit direction, they have irrevocably violated that and ought to be sued over it. I do like OpenAI's response. So OpenAI, in classic form, they like these long blog posts. They did this with the Times too. But they published their emails with Elon over the period where OpenAI was deciding basically how it was going to get the money it needed to keep building AI. And Elon, and if you read the emails, Elon seems on board with turning it into a for-profit, says it's the only way to ever compete with Google, but thinks a better idea is for Tesla to take it over, of course, his car company. So I don't know.
So this is the problem with Elon, is that he says a lot of stuff I agree with for all the wrong reasons. And so I'm just like, I actually agree with the tweet, but then like you look into why you're like, I know you don't, this is just manipulative on your part, but like I do agree with what you're saying, even though I know that it's just like positioning. That's the problem.
Yeah, that must be tough for you.
Very tough for me. It's one of my real, to talk a lot about with my therapist.
Well, okay, to kind of get very specific, in the emails,
they're so good. Everyone should read them.
It's not clear. Yeah, it's not clear that he's asking for it to become for profit, which I think is kind of what this is going to, the battle lines are going to break down around, right? Like he is saying that it's going to be extremely hard to compete with DeepMind and Google and Meta and these like much more resourced organizations, and that it's going to take at least $1 billion. And I think at the time these emails were happening, there was maybe $100 million committed.
Less than that too, which is also incredible because it was a reminder of the gap between the press release and reality. But Dave, lower down, he's talking about sort of for profit and making it a part of Tesla.
Well, some person on his team made some point about making it a cash cow for Tesla, right? So like I think, but that wasn't him who said that. It is kind of
he seems to be making a consistent point that the level of resources is just enormous, which he was right. And,
he also is making the point that, so I think his lawsuit is making a lot of OpenAI, its core model not being open source and that being at odds with its mission. But there are a lot of emails where he talks about, he actually says this technology your crown jewels should not be open source. And, you can focus on benefiting humanity in the other way. So look, lawsuits argue things to make a point and aren't, but well, Sam, what would you like to say?
Look, the way I read it is, they're like, we need to raise $100 million. He's like, you need $1 billion, right? And like, the way I read that, honestly, is I don't think I don't think he was wrong. I think he's a smart guy about it, but it's also like unbelievably self-serving for him to say that with a goal of, I want this. So he's totally. Like, oh, you think you need $100 million? Like, no, you need way more. And I'm the only one that can give it to you. So come work for me. Like, it's a recruiting pitch, right? Is basically what that reads to me as. And like, it's couched in a unique, but he is right that they needed way more and they do need way more. So look, for me, the real thing again, you go back to is like, the problem with this is that OpenAI convinced everyone, because they were a quote unquote nonprofit, to let them have a bunch of data that they could work with that they otherwise would never have had access to. And like, that is super skeezy, right? And like doing that and then switching into a for-profit, it literally is like, it's like, Jess, if like a university came to you and was like, hey, we're doing some really important research, like, can we just have like a copy of your articles for the super important research we're doing for research purposes? And you're like, yeah, that seems reasonable. I like research. And they're like, oh, by the way, we took all the articles and we're posting them on the internet, right? And like, that's the bait and switch that I think they need to be held to account for on the nonprofit to for-profit. The Elon thing, again, I think he's right about it just for the wrong reasons.
Brett, what do you think?
To be honest, I was not super in the weeds of all of this. I saw it at a really high level. I think I'm just really tired of Elon, to be honest. I'm just like, he's got to come out and trash everything all the time. Like, I remember when we were having our second child and I was like we were naming our kids after interesting people. Our first was Ansel. And I was like, maybe Elon. Because at the time it was like,
oh my God, you dodged the rocket, not a bullet.
Just to be clear, I never once thought that.
Okay.
Elon was on my name list because I was like, this guy is so brilliant.
I don't remember this name list, and I'm worried.
Well, maybe it was just on my personal name list because the reputation of Elon in like 2016 was so different than now, and I'm so annoyed by this man.
He went from being a face to being a heel.
It's really just fucking annoying, to be honest. I'm like, why do you have to say something about everything? I'm sad because I thought he was saving the earth and building tunnels and cars and spaceships. And now I'm just like, I feel like he's ruining a lot of things.
I do love
really
the spaceships. See, that's the problem is like, I have SpaceX stock because I bought it and I was like, I love this company. And like, I guess I have to swallow. I obviously I don't have Tesla stock, but like SpaceX, I just had to invest in because it's fucking awesome.
So Sam, are you going to buy the SpaceX thruster powered Tesla Roadster?
No.
With Grok.
In a moment of like euphoria / like excitement, the only thing I've ever bought from Tesla is I did pre-order like a Cybertruck when it first came out. Oh no, I didn't. It wasn't. I didn't. It wasn't the Cybertruck. It was at the same time. It was the little like really expensive sports car.
The Roadster.
The Roadster.
The road. No. The $250,000 ridiculous one.
Yeah.
That they like announced.
The Roadster. Yeah.
So when they came out with that, it was like $1,000 to pre-order one, and Bitcoin was fucking ripping, and I was feeling super rich, and I was like, oh, I want one of these. These things look awesome. But then I woke up the next morning and was like, I don't want this. There's no way.
Well, maybe you're on the list for the new one with the SpaceX
Here's a question for
thrusters.
you guys. Is it possible Elon actually doesn't matter that much anymore?
I'm just kind of tuning him out. I mean, that's just me personally.
What do you mean by that?
It's a good question, Dave. I'm not sure what I mean.
That these companies are so big that they run themselves, and he's just an avatar.
I think his views, what he shares on his platform, do drive a lot of the tech news cycle this day.
Yeah.
The fate of his companies, his words.
Yep.
He's not supporting any presidential candidate. You have a whole news cycle around that, right? And I just actually wonder if that matters, right? In terms
well,
of...
better than us. I think he'll stop mattering when everyone like Brit gets so sick of him that they won't click on the articles anymore. And the question, so the question I have for you, Jess, is like you're closest to this. Is like, has
people
Elon
are still
stopped
interested.
being a traffic driver?
Yeah.
So until people get so burned out of this,
not
the
actually.
narrative,
I don't know. I mean, I think again, there should be legitimately deep interest in his businesses and the things he's doing, for better or worse, but
not commiserate with the market caps. I mean, Tesla's now a $500 billion market cap company, and like SpaceX is cool, and everything else is kind of silly, right? And like, there's a lot of $1 trillion companies. Like from a pure like share of value perspective, people shouldn't. I mean, now Tesla is way more owned by consumers, and like I think that changes what the consumer news looks at, right? Because it's basically a meme stock, but still, it's like I don't know.
Well, the cars are still amazing. They're still incredible.
Yeah, but he's no longer the biggest EV salesman, and like there's a bunch of others, and like blah blah blah.
And EVs are in trouble. I mean, not that
I don't understand this actually. I haven't really dived into the data around EVs, but the whole fact that they're in trouble is a very interesting thing that I don't totally understand.
We have a newsletter, The Electric, which I was also not deeply informed on this subject, but am now more informed. And its demand has just been lower than expected. And more people are making them. And guess what? China is making a lot of them.
Is it because the prices are just too high? Is that what it comes down to?
And range anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys have gas cars, don't you?
No.
We
only have electric cars?
Yeah. We drive Teslas.
So we have one electric car, but it's only for like the super short hops. And like we have gas cars because like, and I will tell you the range anxiety thing. Like I once had to drop our middle son at a test and I had no battery left. And it was a critical test for me to drop him at. And like, it's real, the range anxiety thing, right?
If you're late.
What would the range need to be for you to not have range anxiety, Sam? Because right now it's like 300 miles.
Sort of. Well, more. Just a lot more.
310.
I mean, like you're talking to a guy who my cell phone's almost always out of battery, right? Like this is like a joke, right? Like I don't like charging things, and like that's not my.
That's
problem.
On you, right?
Like you like getting gas. You have to get gas in a gas car. You know that, right?
Sam's like, I need a nuclear battery.
No, to be clear, like Jess will tell you this. I'm a big believer in running your car to zero on empty, but I can buy gas.
You can't talk about this topic. It's too upsetting.
I refuse to fuel a car until it's out.
Here's the deal. I was going down to San Jose Airport a couple of weeks ago in the morning, and I came out, realized I hadn't charged my car. And it was super simple to just stop by a supercharger. And in 5 minutes, I had enough battery to get to the airport, and it was no problem. And maybe that makes me a sophisticated EV driver. I don't know, but like, it's just like really straightforward to me to like solve this problem.
So if there was a fleet of Ubers with huge batteries in the back and you could like hit a button and it would show up for $100 and refuel up your EV then I would feel differently because I'm like, okay, cool, I'm like covered.
That might actually be a good business idea.
That might be a good business actually. Like you just basically get a bunch of trucks and you're like, look, there's an app and it's like really
swap
expensive.
The batteries?
It's like AAA.
No, they just plug it in.
Charge. It's like a roving supercharger.
Isn't battery swapping also a thing?
I think it was going to be, but then it never became a thing.
Okay.
It's also they're so heavy, and like then you have to stop. If you're just like, look, here's the deal. It's like you run out of fuel. I keep a little jerry can in the back of the car because I do push the cars. And in an emergency, I go, we can get some gas. And like I guess I could do that with an extra.
Stored gasoline all over the place.
But yeah, I mean, like I would look in 2001. I am sure you could raise $1 billion for the hey, we're gonna have a truck and it's gonna like there's an app and you press a button and then a dude comes up.
2001. You could have done that 3 years ago.
But
That's what I said.
Plenty of superchargers.
Okay.
And they're actually building electric charging into roads now. I think the first test is in Michigan or Minnesota, where there's like literally an electric charging lane.
Okay, so they're making EVs into trains.
This is a classic more or less. The Morons believe in the future of EVs and are so technologically sophisticated and just logistically on their game that it's easy for them. The lessons, or one of the lessons, have a slightly harder time, charging things, being organized. But to be honest, are probably more like the rest of American society and global society.
As I tell you all the time, I am the everyman. I am an everyman.
Well, we're painting the future, Sam.
I love EVs. I can't wait until all our cars are EVs. I just don't.
Really?
I guess that's why it's so interesting.
Like
what is the real gap here? It's like objectively, they're just amazing cars. I'm a huge car person. I love cars. I've had many really extraordinary cars of all types, and the Model Y is one of the greatest products ever created. Like it's unbelievable, and
I love my Tacoma.
Yeah. Also one of the best cars.
I do covet a Rivian. I mean, when I look at them, they're just so good looking.
The Morons are so long on EV. We even all have EBs, electric bikes.
Yeah. we like them.
Very long on those too.
We're lazy, so we also like the electric bikes.
I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 electric bikes.
You don't need to count your electric bikes on air. Not important.
So what is the gap, you guys? Seriously, what's the gap causing this demand thing? Is it just simply range anxiety and
cost?
And if there were a $30,000 or a $20,000 EV.
I'm afraid of Teslas because I don't trust the software, but that's
fair. But that's a different thing. Like the EV-ness and the self-drivingness are totally different issues.
Those are two different things. I understand them.
Given all the smack we talk about, the lessons talk about Elon, I'm like just worried that with their self-driving might be a little different for us.
Oh my God.
It's like given the amount of smack I talk about Elon Musk, am I gonna own a car where Elon can hit a button and
don't buy any
me into
Chinese
the side
EVs
of the road?
Either then, Sam. I think you're now blacklisted.
Totally. Well, the Chinese, I'm sure they would just upload all the data, right? It's like
okay.
It's kind of like the second Elon starts changing people's Twitter profiles, the next logical step is for him to have the app where he's crashed his car.
He didn't change Sam's Twitter /X profile. Do you guys remember in the heart of those dark, exciting days of the OpenAI drama, Sam posted a picture of himself returning back to the office with a badge. So he took that picture and manipulated it and posted it on X.
Oh, I see.
Okay, one
and
more.
Put closed AI.
Did he use Grok or OpenAI for that?
I don't know. I got to start using Grok just to compare.
I tried to, but I had to pay more for it. Oh, no, actually, I already did. No. Oh, no, it's just better marketing. I thought I had paid for it by accident.
I did too, but it's a default in the rail. It's very confusing. One more topic on AI. So I don't know if you guys read the great op-ed by Tim O'Reilly in The Information this week. Tim, an amazing entrepreneur, longtime Valley thinker, wrote a piece basically saying that the AI venture capital race, the race for all these startups to raise gobs and gobs of money, has echoes of the ride-hailing wars when Uber and back then Didi and Lyft and so many also took huge sums of money to, he argues, essentially cement their monopoly power because that was going to be the only way that investors would ever get returns. So it's a really compelling argument. It has tremendous number of comments just showing people kind of engaging with it, pointing out AI is different in terms of its capital needs. But I'm curious, since you guys are actually the venture capitalists, what you kind of think about the argument, which also if you follow his argument, he's saying that sort of smaller investors and smaller companies are going to get boxed out by these big guys. So, Brett, what do you think?
I think it's true for the models, right? Like that's what's been the tune of Silicon Valley for the last year. Early stage funds can't invest in this stuff. We're already boxed out. We can invest on the streams that come off of it. But I actually found his argument to be really compelling. And Tim is such a legend and such a great thinker. And what was interesting was like that they all get commoditized and become kind of the same, and you aren't really shifting much at all. And to your point, Jess, even like many of them died along the way. Now we're kind of left with a couple kind of leaders in the space. And I think that's where everyone's triangulating this will net out. So it wasn't as shocking to me as far as like the outcome of where this is all headed and what's going on in the industry right now and who's kept out of it and who's in it. But I did like the comparison to the sort of Uber and sort of ride hailing market. I thought that was a really smart and interesting argument.
Can I have two takes? One, This has clearly happened with Google. I actually was in Salt Lake City earlier this week, and the driver, I paid $75 for a ride. And the driver asked me how much I paid and then told me how much he got paid for it, which is $25. And it's like, if there's a monopoly out there to really go after right now, it's Uber. It's wild. They did it. There's literally the perfect monopoly practice where like you basically spend to gut the industry, and then when no one's left, you just take all the money, which is why they're profitable.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I jump in and also say I was comparing a price of an Uber and a Lyft leaving SFO the other day. The Uber was $125 and the Lyft was $60. It was literally 50% less for like a comfort vehicle, kind of that whole I was like, this is insane. How much margin is Uber taking on this?
Well, if you think about it, like that's exactly why. I mean, it's funny. Like everyone's like, Uber finally figured out to be profitable. It's like not that hard. You just take all the drivers' money. Like it's not like and jack prices, and we'll see how long that lasts and whether the government. But like like that's what happens when you control the market. Now on the AI thing, look, what I'd say is this: there's no stable configuration for the base models where there's like 100 of them. There's either going to be zero that make any money, so they all are worthless, right? Because it is everywhere. And like for what it's worth, that's been my bet all along is that like OpenAI is going to zero, right? From the base, from the core value perspective, it's just completely nothing, or it's like 2 or 3, and like that's the first bet VCs are making, right? Which is what stable configuration do you end up in the long term for these things, right? Is like, are they all worthless? Or are they or will it be like the Highlander style, like one winner with a few tag-ons, right? And like, I don't know, like I think Tim is 100% right. I don't think that there's a stable configuration of this stuff where there's anything in the middle, which is the only thing I would push him on or question, which is like, yes, this is all true. And like VC has a ton of incentive to hype up AI and make those bets and blah, 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 blah. But like, is there a stable configuration where this isn't the case, but they're not worth zero? Like, I don't think there is. Like, I don't think there is a world where like the scale of normal VC and normal business can play here. Like, I think this is going to pull to one of two extremes where either investors make zero money or a tiny number of investors make a shit ton of money with only a few winners.
Yeah, that's a good follow-up. We'll put it to him. Dave, any thoughts before we move to end this wonderful hour together?
I think most of it was covered pretty well. I just, I do agree with Tim that there is a premature market concentration thing happening here. And the lived reality of it has been that is the case. Like there just isn't a lot to invest in terms of this, at least in the broad, like we've been calling it at Offline, like we're still investing in AI, but not on the nose, right? Like we're looking at the things that are downstream and interesting applications, et cetera. But the like massive concentration that's going on and at the speed of which I think that's the real thing that Tim's pointing to here is that one can use capital to concentrate market power extremely quickly in certain scenarios, and you can go back through history. Like Sam was saying, Uber's not the last or is maybe the most recent, but this goes all the way back to Rockefeller and, many things before. And so what does that leave us with here? I don't know. I guess like I'm somewhat optimistic that in a world where there are both centralized, like the one thing he doesn't talk about is these decentralized models that appear to be moving pretty quickly. And the players that run decentralized networks, talked about a little bit before, but you've got Apple with small computers in everybody's pockets, Androids out there with small computers in everybody's pockets. Like these things can have smaller models on them, can be highly decentralized. They can play wildly different roles in the AI ecosystem going forward. And I don't know what impact that's going to have. I think a lot of these points we're talking about relate to, will it be highly centralized? Will it be not? Will there be high market concentration? Will there be not? But it's not taking into account some of the technical architecture things that could play out over the next few years, which we've seen happen in other markets as well. So I don't know. Those are just some thoughts.
Yeah.
Overall, I liked the piece.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tim, for the piece. And yeah, anyone else who has an op-ed, Dave, that you would like to write, let us know.
Just going to do this to me every week.
Every week. Every other week, maybe. Anyway,
all right.
Britt, we've got a little bit of pop culture happening. When are the Oscars? Soon?
Oh, the Oscars are on Sunday. And I have a trivia question. Ready?
Okay.
Which actor do you think made the most money in all of 2023? I'm going to give you 10, 9, 8,
I think you're asking the wrong group.
6, 5, 4. You can throw some names out there. Come on.
I already know the answer, so I can't participate.
I think the answer is you don't know, but go.
Okay, you would never think this. Adam Sandler made the most money in 2023. And Margot Robbie was a close second with Barbie, obviously. Right. But I just would never have thought Adam Sandler. He did the Bar Mitzvah movie, and then he did a Netflix animated movie called Leo, which our kids enjoyed. So anyway, congrats to Adam Sandler for being number one.
Toll Booth Willie.
Actor.
But that's not really who made the money. That's just who made the money on the films or something.
Yeah, I'm talking about the actors.
Yeah, but they get paid all sorts of ways. I mean, it's because, where the money is cheap content. It's comedy is so cheap to make that it's so high margin, right? That's kind of the beauty of comedy, right? Is you think about staging a Taylor Swift show versus some dude with a microphone, right? It's the microphone guy is going to crush it on margin.
Yeah, Ed Sheeran actually probably crushes it in the music industry.
Yeah, I was talking to someone in the comedy business, and they were saying Ed Sheeran is the only thing that comes close because it's just him, right?
He's a one-man
But
band.
Even better is comedy because you just put a dude on a stage with a microphone. It's all margin. So when someone sells out a stadium, right? It's just they make so much money.
Comedians don't sell at stadiums. Ed Sheeran sells out stadiums.
Well, the guy, who's the guy from Ted Lasso who we saw?
Jason Sudeikis?
No, Roy Price.
Roy Price. Apparently, that guy makes a fucking fortune.
Really?
Because he's big in there's apparently a huge middle class of comedy that's just crushing it in this era because it's so high margin.
Wait, this is a bright spot in a bleak media landscape.
Interesting.
Roy Price. I have to look up his name.
Crushing it. I'm not going to say the number I was.
No, sorry, not Roy Price. Roy Price was the Amazon executive. What's
Well, he's probably also doing fine.
He plays
Roy Kent. Roy Kent. Sorry,
but that's not
guys.
his real name. What's his real name?
Brett Goldstein.
Middle class of, he's kind of.
He was very funny. We saw him in a live thing.
I was shocked. He makes a lot of money per night.
Huh.
I actually think from a mathematical basis, this is my point about Adam Sandler.
Where did you see him?
We saw him the Orpheum or something.
A medium-sized San Francisco theater, nothing special.
So it wasn't Chase Center.
No.
I mean, we've been to Chase too, but I'm just saying, I actually think you talk about who's really making money in Hollywood. My sense is that the comedians are probably out earning Adam Sandler. Their just numbers aren't public.
I'm going to do that math and I'll report back to everyone.
That's a good insight. So guys, we need to wrap. Let's thank our listeners, viewers, people who've just stuck with us. Another fun week. I'm actually quite excited. The lessons are going to the Indian Wells tennis tournament this weekend. So if anyone else, any other tennis fans out there, go Alcaraz. I must say that, or my 7-year-olds will feel betrayed. But
enjoy it.
We got a little tennis in, and we'll see you back here next week. So big thanks. Please share the episode, share your comments, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye-bye.
See you in the pool house.
See ya.
See you later.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.